Hi everyone, I'm here today with Patrick von Huene, which is very exciting, who is there quite early in the morning in Brookline with us. So hello Patrick.
Good
Uh,
morning.
Good morning or good afternoon here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously you're one of the biggest names in the recorder world, and obviously your father was probably, I think, one of the most famous makers of
A
the
bit bigger.
a good maker,
It was
famous
big.
maker of the 20th century. So I presume that probably gives us the answer as to how you got into recorder making.
Fate. I had a different career, and then my father got ill, and they asked if I would come in and check out the business. And since I was a musician earlier on in my life as well with some training, it seemed to be a good idea. And I was good with my hands, so I came in on a trial period, and here I am almost 40 years later.
Wow,
So,
that's
yeah.
amazing. I think that's quite true of quite a few of the kind of names in the recorder world, sort of Merck, Mollenhauer. You have kind of people in the family going away doing their own thing, and then kind of coming back in
Yeah, it was
after a while.
It was good to do your own thing. I never thought I would work at the workshop. I, of course, swept the floors and did some cleanup as a child, but I never thought I would be making instruments. I had different ideas in my life, but everything came around, and I love it. I enjoy it. I come in very early in the morning, and I love doing what I'm doing, and it's interesting and involves a lot of thought and attention to detail. And if I do my job well, the performer's happy, and if the performer's happy and does their job well, an audience is happy. So it's a win situation.
Yeah, definitely. And you make obviously so many varieties of models of recorders. Is there a favorite one that you have to make?
Uh, well, they're ones I have to make all the time, so I'm most used to them. Denners I like at 415. The Ripperts I make at 440, which is close to the Venetian pitch. Those are sort of the bread and butter instruments that one has to make. Bresson voice flutes we make also. We have an original. We have a number of originals in our own collection, which are very helpful to see what the original maker intended and the subtle nuances that are very different from what we expect today as far as performance. The original instruments were obviously used in a much smaller venue, if you can even call it that, for the entertainment of the king, the prince, the duke, or whoever, not in a big hall like Royal Albert Hall or Boston Symphony Hall, much too big. It was for an intimate entertainment for the king or the court. So our thoughts of volume and projection are much different now than what they were in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. Keeping that in mind when you're making historically inspired instruments.
And in terms of the woods, you use a variety of woods, but I'm guessing the most popular is the European boxwoods. Um, is that a nice wood to work with, or
That's wonderful to work with. It's expensive because there's so much attention that you need and so much throwaway. We pride ourselves in the level of quality of the wood that we use. Uh, let's say if you start a batch of 100 instruments, you probably have 20% throwaway. Even at that point, it's already selected very carefully. And we do use the true European boxwood. We don't use the Castello boxwood or the Zapatero, which is, of course, more expensive. It comes from France or England. Most of our stuff came from the UK. Um, that's unfortunately sort of drying up, um, but we still get it and have quite a stockpile of it. We use other materials also, granadilla, ebony, but that's now on the CITES treaty list, so that's becoming more difficult to, let's say, restock our billets of wood. And then there are other materials that we can use, which are we don't talk about.
Or hopefully with the reversal of the CITES on the instruments, hopefully that will become a bit easier on things like grenadilla and the sort of the rosewoods.
Uh, well, it's not difficult for people in the United States to get from the stock that we have, but it's a matter of sending it overseas, whether it's Japan or Germany or whatever. Now, it's not so difficult for us to get instruments from the UK or from Germany because they already have a whole system in place to certify each instrument. But the bureaucracy here is as expensive as an instrument, so it's not worth it.
Ah, right, I didn't realize.
Whether it's due to current political situation or not, it's just too much. If you want to come and pick up your instrument, that's probably the easiest.
Have a nice visit to like Boston, I guess.
It would be everyone's welcome. We have an open door. You can come and see the old way we do things.
And so, I mean, you travel, or Eric travels around, comes to Europe and the UK quite frequently for
I'd love
exhibitions.
to travel to the workshops. There are no workshops right now, obviously. I've missed going to London for the past 2 years. I really miss having some nice pints. I look forward to it. I was hoping to be there in November, but obviously that is not happening at the moment. It's a concern for everyone, all the retailers and the makers, these workshops and exhibitions, which are so important to have access to customers and finding out what people are looking for, what they want, what directions should we make other instruments, should we modernize certain things. It's very important for that contact with your constituents, your customers, and teachers and players. So we miss that.
Yeah. So you come to ones in there. Is there much in the United States? I think there's kind of we know of you. We've obviously got Tom Prescott. Is there any sort of other makers in the US that are sort of up and
Tom,
coming?
Tom is the only other maker that I'm aware of at the moment. There may be a dabble of people who make things in their garage or in their workshop as a hobby. But as far as bona fide instruments, I believe Tom is probably the only maker left besides us in this country. Bob Marvin passed away recently. He was up in the Canadian Maine border. He did very specialized work. He's gone now, unfortunately. So it's just basically, I think, Tom Prescott and us in the States. Of course, many instrument makers in Europe, in the UK and Germany, Italy, Holland, and such, and some in Japan. But as far as the United States goes, we're it. Tom Prescott and us.
Yeah. Which is a shame. Being such a sort of massive country.
Uh, Recorder and recorder playing is not part of American culture traditionally. You know, we do jazz, right, and rock and roll and blues, but Baroque performance is not part of our culture. It was done, but as far as the instrument makers, it was all Europe, Germany, primarily in France, and some in Italy, but primarily Germany and France. We
Yeah.
just don't have that background of culture.
Do you think that the early music community in the US is growing? I mean, we have quite a few customers in the US.
Growing, if it is, it's very slowly growing. I see a definite decline in people playing. I mean, a lot of people are still playing, but a lot of people from the 60s and 70s, when the whole explosion of early music performance took off, these people are maturing to the point where they're having difficulty playing now, physical limitations or whatever. It would be nice to see a crop of young players coming up everywhere. I think that's important for everyone. But it's not happening as we would like it to happen. They're too preoccupied by their cell phones or multimedia. They don't want to practice. They want instant gratification, and it doesn't quite work that way. Um, but we know that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have more uh, an expansion of people interested in playing and continuing to play. It's just not the explosion that we saw in the 70s and 80s, which was phenomenal for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, well, here in the UK, we've still got the biggest uptake here is actually in the over 60s, sort of returning after retirement to kind of playing recorder again and it being quite communal. Whereas the kids in school these days are often learning ukuleles, something much cooler than the
Yeah.
recorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of our, let's say, mature players in this country are doing it for social contact only. Their level of playing is certainly not what it is in the UK or on the Europe proper. It's just more of a social thing. Um, there are people who, of course, are very dedicated, but it's not the same level. We have some wonderful young players coming up from the Boston area who are phenomenal players. They've done competition in the UK. Martin Bernstein, for instance, from this area. So there's some hope,
Yeah.
but it's not the same as in the UK or in Europe, where you have the academies and the music schools, which really are nurturing some real playing and some good players. We just don't have the volume of people interested. It's
Yeah.
not part of our culture,
Yeah.
but
Um,
we're here, so we have to deal with that.
you're here. And I can see you there in the office with lots of what look like finished recorders behind
They
you.
are finished,
Yeah.
all behind me, and they're all available. Give a ring, give a call, give an email. Because of no workshops, we have quite a stock of instruments at the moment. Because normally these things would go to workshops in the States, and of course also gearing up for the London workshop. And then Stuttgart in Germany, which was in May. Well, everything got canceled. So we have for us, it's quite a stock of instruments. Usually we don't have this
Yeah.
many.
Well, hopefully by the end of this year, going into next year, hopefully next year will be all back to normal.
Or a new normal.
Well, a new normal, of course.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So one thing that I always love about the Von Huene instruments is they always look so um, perfect in terms of the finish. I think you're probably the sort of I think they are the most attractive instruments on the market. But as you say, you really pride yourselves in that kind of the aesthetics as well as the sound of the instruments.
Um, it's important that for the kind of money you're spending, certainly for our instruments, which are certainly top dollar, you get something that's finished, right? You don't have something dripping in sticky oil. You don't have things that are all ragged in the bore. It's finished. It makes a big difference. Okay, it's an investment for you to play, to do music, and if you ever need to resell it, you can recoup generally what you've spent. It's important. It's all a matter of attention to detail. It's the difference between a Ferrari and a Cortina, or I say a Ferrari or a Rambler. Ramblers you don't have in the UK, but there was a bottom end vehicle in the 50s and 60s here. I mean, it was basic transportation, but it was not something, it will get you to the dance, but it won't do it in style like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, right? It's not going to pick up chicks. It's all important. It's fit and finish. And it's important. Um, it makes a difference. Makes a difference. A lot of people aren't concerned with that, and that's fine. That's their right. But for us, it's always been important. We have a lot of original instruments from Bresson, Stainsby, Denner, other makers. And the workmanship that they did was phenomenal when you consider there was no electricity. They took the time and the attention. Now, granted, a lot of these instruments were used in the court, so they couldn't be a mess, you know. They were used for the pleasure of the king, and usually the king paid for it, so they were going to be up to snuff, playing wise and attractive, and so on and so forth. And then there were good players who were paid for by the court, and they could afford these special instruments made by Bresson or Denner or Stainsby or whoever. Some amazing workmanship, and that's an inspiration too. Luckily, my dad was able to acquire a lot of instruments, original instruments, through Sotheby's or Christie's or private sales that are very important for us to, if not just emulate, understand. The way we play today is much different from the way they were playing in the 17th, 18th century. You know, we're in big venues, as I've mentioned before, and people want to blow loud and they want to be fast and everything. It was much more intimate. There's a place for everything, and you have to be able to provide instruments for that. But generally, we are doing instruments that are inspired by the originals. There are some makers in Europe, some who passed recently, who have a different understanding or a different take on what they want to make. That's absolutely fine. There's room for everybody and all the different types of voicing. It's a matter of what you're doing. Are you playing very loud? Are you playing very fast? Do you blow really strongly? It all depends on the venue and what type of music you want to do. There's room for everybody.
Yeah. And you mentioned the historical instruments there. I think one of my favorite instruments that you make is the Turton with the original silver.
The soprano.
Ribbing. Yes.
I have one here.
You have one there. Perfect.
With silver. We'll see if you can see it.
Yeah.
And then the beautiful engraving on the bottom.
Is that silver work that you do yourself, or is that?
I put this on. I have somebody who does the engraving. A man has to know his limitations. I don't do the engraving. We have a very wonderful man who does that for us. But we do it the original way, where it's engraved, and then the silver is spun onto the instrument, and then finished engraving, and then little nails that hold all the flowerets in, all sterling nails that hold it in. So it's a lot of work, and you pay for that, of course. Someone pays for that.
Yes.
But lovely instrument. Plays well too.
Yes. No, they're fantastic. So I think one of my other favorite models that you have, because obviously we try them in the shop, to be able to advise people that and tell them. So the other model I actually love is the Scherer 392.
Oh yes, yeah. We have the original. Sorry, I don't have it out from the safe. The original instrument is in all ivory. It's solid ivory. That could be done, I suppose, but we do normally in boxwood. And these were originally commissioned by a gentleman in England who used to conduct an orchestra. He's not sort of available to the public right now. I'll leave that where it is. He needed some instruments at 392, and the original is just a little bit lower than 392, but we scaled it for 392, and so it's in limited production, but it's a lovely instrument, wonderful sound, very rich, and all still available.
And so for our customers who will have obviously never, myself included, tried an ivory instrument, what does an ivory instrument play like? The original.
First, it's heavy in weight. It's cold in feel. It has a clear sound, glassy sound. It's not very warm. It projects very well. There are quite a few professional players who have them, Denners from us. We make Denners out of that, and we did a copy of the Royal College of Music Denner, which was beautifully carved. And we have quite a few of those out in the world with professionals. Dan Lorne, Bergen had one, a few other people. And I know that Dan still uses his for Vivaldi and Saint-Telemann, as well as other things, but they respond very well. Any Denner is usually going to respond well, but it has a very glassy sound, pure sound. It projects very well, and that's really because of the density of the material. You know, if we want a clear sound for wood, we're going to say generally grenadilla. It just projects better in a big hall. But ivory, of course, being very special material, it projects very well, and it's, of course, striking to see. And
so we've touched on COVID and how it's affected the business. Has there been any positives at all for you and the business?
positives
Yeah.
gives me more time to finish instruments. uh, no workshops, so the amount of repairs that I normally do has plummeted. We do lots of repair work, probably 60% or more repairs for everyone in the States, and we welcome any repairs from anywhere. It's just a matter of what material you're sending us, obviously, with certain restrictions. And they're always interesting and fascinating. Some are really pretty straightforward, generally cleaning and stuff, but we can repair most anything. We have the facilities to do that. And I have some wonderful, they're not even apprentices, people who work with me, who are very interested in doing very specialized, challenging repairs, you know, instruments that get run over by a car or get sat on or whatever. And we can pretty much fix anything. It's a rare case that we say, no, forget it. It's time for a new instrument or a replacement. We don't have people coming in as we have in the past to try out instruments. I mean, we send instruments out on approval, like most places have to do. And we adhere to a strict protocol with disinfecting the mouthpiece and such and so on and so forth, which one has to do. It's just for your own safety as well. So people can feel comfortable putting it in their mouth, right?
Yeah.
It's just the way it is right now. And it's probably a good protocol anyway, in general. So we're not having the street traffic that we normally would have without this COVID-19 thing. I'm sure it's the same in the UK.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're at a distance, so we're not talking with each other with a mask on, which is much more pleasant.
It's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing for COVID for us is inspired us to do more things like this that we wouldn't usually do, which is quite nice.
It is nice because you still have, let's say, more of a mass media contact with people who normally wouldn't be involved at all. They're sitting at home, they're either bored, they want to see a virtual tour of a workshop or meet the maker or whatever. And it's an avenue for them to do that, which is very positive. We've done some Zoom things already for other organizations. It's new to me, but it's important that people know that you're up and running, you know, and we're still up and running.
As well as recorded, you make Baroque flutes as well.
We do make Baroque flutes, not as much as we used to. It was really a love thing from my father. He was a flutist, and he loved the challenges of some of these amazing, beautiful Baroque flutes. We're actually finishing some, hopefully this week, a couple of Bresson flutes, like in the Royal Albert Museum, which have been sitting for a few years unfinished. We have hundreds of instruments from my dad from storage that are unfinished. Some we have to sort out. What are they? What needs to be done? Can they be done? You know, a big stock of unfinished instruments that my father started and left no direction or even paperwork or whatever. So it's back to the drawing board, figuring out what they are. Can they be finished? Is it important that they even be finished? But there are certain things that we know that are important that we have bodies for that can be finished, like Grenzers, like Rottenbergs. These are the general instruments that people are going to be able to play. We're working, as I mentioned, on 2 Bressons right now. Hopefully, it'll be finished this week or next week, and they're available. They're in ebony with the true sterling rings on the ends, with the reverse tenons, just like what Bresson did um, a long time ago. A lovely sounding instrument, very strong and powerful. So we still do them, but on a much more limited basis than recorders. I'm not a flute player myself. I can play the scale. That's where it ends. But I have Eric Haas, who's the manager of the store. He's a wonderful flute player, as well as Eddie, who has been with us for 3 years. I guess we could call him an apprentice, but he's working on these flutes now, and he's quite a good player. So it's important to have somebody in-house who plays. I have Roy, who works with me. He's my left hand and right hand. He's been with me for over 20 years. He's a phenomenal professional recorder player, and which is helpful. I used to have other people in-house who were just my test drivers. They just played the instruments. That's another reason why they're expensive, is because they're played in. They're played and played and played and revoiced multiple times by not just me. I mean, I can play somewhat, but these people really put the instrument through the repertoire, which is necessary, so that when they come downstairs to the office here, they're ready to be sent out to a customer. And hopefully they like it. And if they don't, or they want something changed, we can do that. That's very important. And we do revoicings, not only our instruments, but all the warranty work for Merck and Mollenhauer and King and Afab and all these people. They luckily have trust in us to do that. And hopefully we can live up to that. I think it's important to be able to service everybody. There's not a big selection here in the States to do that. Tom Prescott probably serves some of his own instruments, but he doesn't do any repair work for anyone else, unless there's an emergency, like in the UK last year, where I wasn't there to do some minor service to our instruments, which people are expecting. And Tom was gracious enough to do some cleaning and revoicing for some customers in the UK because I wasn't there. But I miss being there. As I said, I want a few pints.
Well, yeah, it's such a shame because we were obviously looking forward to seeing you in November.
Yeah.
But hopefully that'll be next November now.
Yeah, I just have to remember to watch where I step off the curb because of the traffic, the difference in the traffic.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's been lovely to have a little insight into your recorder making, and your workshop and your operation there in Brookline.
We are just completing a sort of a virtual tour. It's being edited as we speak, and hopefully it'll be available in a week or two, and that will be online just to let people know. Then they can actually get a tour of us making things and seeing the dust and the wood shavings and the wood storage, and sort of really getting a virtual tour, which a lot of people enjoy doing when they come here. Roy is taking people on a tour, and they have some pictures of me carving and things, so it's more interesting, and you don't have to come in and wear a mask. So hopefully that'll be available in a week or so, and we'll send you a link, which then can be somehow shared with whoever is interested.
We'll definitely get that link from Eric. So that'll be fascinating for people. I know whenever I've gone around workshops, even when you've been around workshops, it's still fascinating to see, people just don't realize how long a recorder takes from being cut down on a tree to.
It takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
The tree takes a very long time to get big enough. Minimum of 300 years.
Yeah.
So it's not that renewable in our time.
Yeah. But once you cut it down, all the drying process and all of that, it's so much longer than people realize. When we get pieces of boxwood, we let it dry a minimum of 5 years before we even touch it. That's a long time, which means a big expense
an investment in time and wood ahead of time before you can even touch it. So you have to have quite a stock of wood. Now, we're not a very big maker, um, but you really need to look in the future. How far am I going to work in the future, so on and so forth? Am I going to be making instruments in 10 years or 20 years? I hope so. I have 2 children I have to put through college. So I have to keep working. But it takes a long time, not just curing the wood, but actually making a finished instrument up to hopefully our standards. It takes time and attention to detail, as I mentioned before. You know, finishing the tone holes, dyeing the instruments. Some people have special requests. We'll honor those if we can, you know, but I won't compromise how we expect it to be with our name on it. That's very important. You know, you have to maintain some degree of continuity and integrity. Well, I hope things open up soon so that we can come back to the UK, or you welcome us Yanks back.
Yes.
When things hopefully settle down and are safer for everyone. We miss that, the interaction with everyone, whether it's the UK or in Europe. It's all important, you know. Music is such a guttural and expressive thing to do with people. It really is a special connection that if you're not a musician, you have no way of understanding that. You know, so you know.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been lovely to talk to you about recorders.
Okay. I hope I haven't been too silly.
Not at all. Not at all. Some fascinating things for our customers. And some insight into recorder making and also the US as well.
Yeah. And if they're interested in a virtual tour of the workshop where they can actually see some action, check out our web, and we'll send a link to you if people are interested through you to see it or whatever. I don't know exactly when it will be up, but we'll let you know.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely share that with
Okay.
everybody so they can see it.
Good.
That's great. So thank you for joining me this morning.
Well, good to see you again. Good to see you again. Stay well. You seem as chipper as ever with all the things that are happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. So hopefully next time we'll see you hopefully in the flesh will be next year.
Wonderful.
At London.
We'll look forward to it.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.